Welcome to the Coffee and Podcast, where specialty coffee means so much more. I am your host, Philip Clayman, and I am so excited to share this episode with you where we interview Danielle Pierson, who's the executive director of Samaritan Village. Samaritan Village oversees multiple safe houses in the Orlando, Florida area, and her story is wild. I did want to let you know that we had some technical difficulties at the beginning of this episode, but you really did not miss much. You just missed me asking Danielle to introduce herself. So once we start the episode, you'll be jumping right into Danielle sharing more about who she is. As always, with episodes like this that start with coffee and blank, we do talk about more sensitive subjects regarding human trafficking. So we do encourage viewer discretion if that's not something that you're prepared to listen to. Otherwise, I really hope you enjoy this episode. And let's dive in.
I am a mother by choice, is what I call it, with a beautiful love story in which I adopted my nephew, who is now 13, about to be 13 years old when he was 2 years old. I myself aged out of the foster care system, kind of went on a journey from the age of 6 until I was 20 years old in the Indiana foster care system. I have my master's in human services from Purdue University Global. And then I am working now on my doctorate of education in leadership and innovation from Purdue University Global as well. And so I am also the executive director here at Samaritan Village, where I am so grateful and so honored to serve among some passionate leaders, some passionate workers, but also among some amazing women.
Wow, amazing. So you shared in that you grew up in the fostering system. Um, what was that? I mean, what was that experience like for you?
Yeah, it was definitely a journey when you are faced with a foster care system. You know, my mother and father, who struggled tremendously with drug addiction and some abuse situations. And so I saw a lot of trauma growing up, myself and my three siblings. However, just the journey in the foster care system, you have to understand that it's not a system that's built to be a parent to any child. It's a system that's built to take care of children. So when you have children who reside in the system for years, that means that core value around parenting is missed, and those core, foundational things that are necessary are missed. However, that journey helped to facilitate who I am today. I say that my passion and my purpose is to be a beacon of light to those who are lost, troubled, and broken. And so, because of my journey, because of what I experienced, I wanted to make sure to be an advocate for those who had experiences that were similar to mine, but also to young women. I just had a drawing and a passion for young women in the midst. So even being a young girl, I would just be drawn to friends who had similar life circumstances that I had, or just face some kind of traumatic life event, and just trying to be a peer that encouraged them and advocated for them, and also for myself. But the journey wasn't always pretty. And so that's what most people have to understand. It wasn't a nice journey that was just packaged beautifully. I had my own personal experiences of healing and just walking through that journey that I still continue on to this day, because healing is definitely not a destination. It's a journey. And so as we walk through this, any traumatic life circumstance, even that childhood trauma, could come up and be, you have to face it. And how do you cope with that? What skills do you use to kind of walk through that? And so my journey was long. I had some great advocates that walked alongside of me. I had some great mentors that walked alongside of me. I had a teacher, my English teacher, and her husband and their family, who took me in my high school years. And they were a foster family for me. And that's what solidified a lot of my educational goals and wanting to just be more than what I ever thought that I could dream or imagine. And so, yeah, they really helped me in fostering that educational piece for me, and championing that for me. So
Wow, that is amazing. So I was going to ask, were you constantly moving homes? Did you build any sort of meaningful relationships while in the fostering system? And it seems like this English teacher That sounds amazing. So they kind of took you in. How long were you in their care?
Absolutely. So, I spent in my foster care years, I was with family, I was with in residential facilities, I was even in the juvenile justice system and locked up for a little while, in the juvenile system, just because of, making poor decisions. But during my high school years, I had a cheerleading coach, two cheerleading coaches, and my English teacher who they just kind of realize what was happening in my life, and they wanted to invest in me and kind of find out what was taking place in my what had happened all these years. And so my high school year, probably my freshman year, is when I met my English teacher, and she took a vested interest at that point in time and just would ask me more personal questions than what other people would ask, in the sense of, oh, she just has bad behavior. It was okay, you have some behaviors, but what's happening in your personal life? And once they found out and that I was in the foster care system for so many years, um, I guess they made a conversation amongst themselves, is what I heard years later. My cheerleading coach and my English teachers, English teacher, they were talking amongst themselves about, because at this point I was in what is similar to like an orphanage, where children who they could not find placement for. So my freshman and sophomore year, I was in this location, didn't have a placement. And so they were having a conversation to find out, like, would anybody be interested in taking care of Danielle? She's in high school. She's really passionate about cheerleading. We know that she's not doing the absolute best because of her circumstance. And so she decided, along with her husband, to have a conversation about taking me in as their foster child. And so that's where the journey began with them, about my sophomore year, where I started literally living with them and kind of cultivating that relationship. But along the journey, I had my cheerleading coaches, I had, as I mentioned, and then I had friends and their mothers who just kind of I always leaned on to, and just have always been mentors and women of just courage and strength and encouragement to me along my journey. And then my foster father and my foster grandfather, my foster grandfather passed away this past winter, who was my best friend. And so we never used the word foster
Mhm.
in our family.
Wow.
That's my family. They've always identified me as their daughter and their granddaughter, and I've been with them for years, in that sense. So
Wow. This is all incredibly inspiring. And so as a parent for myself, I don't think there's really anything more important I'm doing than investing in my children. And something that keeps coming out of your story as you're sharing is it's a journey. It's a journey. It's a journey, but it's not a solo journey, right? I think a lot of times we picture this pilgrimage of like one person hiking up a mountain sort of thing. It's no, it's like it's a community, it's a caravan, it's a group of people, and it really does take a village. And it's just so amazing hearing you experience the benefit of that, but even more so wanting to pass that on to others and be that for others. And it inspires me to say, of course, me investing in my children is important, but what about my neighbors' children? What about the kids that are at my church? What about the kids that I run into from clubs and school? And it kind of opens up my vision in an inspiring way to say, how are we investing in all children, not just, our own as parents? So just
so true.
incredibly inspiring. And so I guess my next question would be, I've met a lot of people that are either involved with fostering, taking in foster children, maybe they want to adopt. With you having had a journey kind of within the fostering system, is there any advice you would give them for people who are maybe looking to help in that way?
Yeah, I think the most important piece of advice is that you have to find within the system, child welfare system, what works for you. A lot of people go after I want to foster, I want to adopt. There are other ways that you can pour into children that are faced with these life circumstances outside of adoption, because most times people come into the circumstance and have the whole ideal of this child, oh, I'm going to take them in, and this is going to be like the beautiful story, and I'm not going to have any hills, I'm not going to have any valleys, and they give up halfway into the journey, recognizing that the children oftentimes have many challenges that sometimes requires a lot more support. And so the encouragement is that find what fits you and understand that it takes one healthy adult that is continually involved in the child's life to help change the trajectory of their life. It didn't say one foster parent. It didn't say one mentor. It said one healthy adult that is consistent in a child's life to help change the trajectory of their life. So find what that is and stick with that young person, stick with that child throughout their life journey to let them know that they're not lost, that they're not unwanted, that they are loved and they are cared for. And that's the most important thing. So I know a lot of times people go after that adoption piece, but you have to really know and truly believe that that's what you're called to do, because challenges are going to come. I don't care how perfect the story may seem once you sign those papers and you meet that judge and you say, yes, I want to adopt this child. The valleys are high,
Yeah.
are low, and the mountains are high, because trauma is real and it mentally affects the life of a child growing up into their adult, teenage, up to adult years. So
Absolutely. And especially teachers, one adult, right? And for you, it was
one
a teacher.
adult.
Wow, amazing. So teachers
Yes,
out there, what an opportunity. And to all of us, what an opportunity. Okay, so I believe you said you were from Indianapolis. Is that correct?
that's
And so then you
correct.
moved down to Florida. Kind of what prompted that move? What took you down to the sunny state?
Yeah, so it's so beautiful because I'm a believer. I believe that I hear from God and God speaks to me, and so in the midst of my healing journey, I was doing amazing work in Indiana. That's what a lot of people don't work in Indianapolis. I was doing amazing work. I was set up really good in the fact of where I've come from and where I was at. I had my own house, had just adopted my nephew, and we were living a pretty decent life. But in the midst of that, I heard God tell me that He wasn't done with my healing journey and that He needed me to make a huge move. And I thought that He was just, talking about making like financial moves or making a move in my career or making, I thought it was something very minute. I didn't think that it was a move of relocation. But I had an eye opening experience facing my own trauma again and revisiting some life circumstances. And at that point, God said, you know what? I can't allow you to stay in a place that's been a source of your trauma and a source of your pain. I need to move you into a place that is going to continue to be about renewing. And
Wow.
so I have one friend that's been here for about 11 years, 12 years, and I come and visit so every so often in Orlando. But during the pandemic, when everything was shut down and we faced, having to wear a mask and no one traveling, I got on the airplane in the middle of COVID-19, and there was about three of us on the airplane. That's how crazy it was. It was no one
Wow.
on this airplane traveling to Orlando, Florida.
Yeah. Easy
We
social
can sit
distancing.
anywhere.
Everyone can just take the whole row.
Everyone can
What a
take the whole
blessing
plane.
too, right? In an airplane.
It was about three of us on the plane, and I got here, and my friend's like, "Well, everything's shut down. What are you going to do?" And I said, "I'm just going to listen to God. I have some time to be at peace and just listen." And so in that time, I clearly heard the unction of God's voice saying that it's time for you to leave and this is where I have for you to be. And He beautifully laid out everything was so easy to make the transition that it had to be nothing but God.
Wow.
I left a 3-bedroom, over 1,200 square foot property, um, beautiful home, and relocated and downsized. But everything that I needed was already here. Someone was moving from Orlando back to Indiana and had a whole entire house, apartment full of furniture, and they didn't know what to do with it in the same time frame. And so they said they found out that I was moving and connected with me, and I had a whole entire apartment full of furniture, fully furnished, brand new furniture, had a job that called me. It's before I could even get down here and was willing to hire me. It was just all coming together beautifully. And that's how I knew. And then being here now at Samaritan Village and just that journey to get here, where I was introduced to this amazing organization. And then the former executive director, knowing my name and working with me on a project and saying, I know someone that would be great for this role, and connecting me to this organization in that sense. And me wanting to I had the passion, and I was reaching out to be a volunteer to Samaritan Village, and just the beautiful alignment of me landing here and to serve in this capacity. It was all orchestrated so beautifully.
Yeah.
Really.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, we have stories as well of just our journey in coffee having so many faith components of God being faithful and calling us to things that we were very uncomfortable with. And at the time, we maybe didn't understand, maybe even for like good reasons we didn't understand. It's just amazing how when you walk in the things he's calling you to, he will prepare the way, right? He'll make it right. He's very faithful. So that's incredible to hear. I love how you volunteered for a season first before, right? Because I think executive director at a safe house, which is a fairly new role. I think you said about a month or two, correct?
Yeah. So I've been here since, believe it or not, 9/11, 2023.
Okay.
9/11.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
it started with volunteering. It just started with getting involved and helping out. What sort of things did you do as you volunteered for Samaritan Village?
So it's so funny. When I reached out to volunteer to start the process. And in the midst, they told me that they were looking for a new executive director. So before I even could step foot to start volunteering, they had, were in search of an executive director. So I didn't get to begin my volunteering because this role became available and they were interested in going through the interviewing process with me. So,
Wow. So neat.
yeah.
So I want to back up a little bit. There's one more part of your story that I just think is amazing and also inspiring. So we already talked about kind of your time in the fostering system, but you said that you adopted your nephew, correct?
Yes,
What
yes.
was
So I
that journey
adopted my
like?
nephew. Wow. Wow. So I was working a big piece of time that I was in Indiana when I obtained my bachelor's degree. I was working in the child welfare system as a guardian ad litem. So I was representing children in the foster care system in court for 10 years. I was a guardian ad litem in Indianapolis. And so during my journey, of course, I'm working with case managers that are with Department of Child Services regularly, and so that story just came about because I was working with this case manager, and she said, "Man, Danielle, I need to talk to you about a case that I've had for a little while that I think that you would need to know about." And I'm like, "Okay, well, I'm thinking it's another family that we would usually work with or something of the nature." And she just needed to keep me updated. And she said, "Well, I have this little boy that I've had on my caseload since he was born. And he's now 1.5, about to be 2 years old. And the mom just recently gave his dad's name. And when we looked up his dad's name, he's your brother." And I was like, "Oh, no, not my brother." I think I know all his kids at this point. And so she's like, "Yeah, no, I think that he really is your brother's son, not only because of her identifying him as a alleged father, but I see this little boy every day for the last almost 2 years, and he looks just like you."
Wow.
And I was like, "No, you're kidding me." And she said, "Well, let me send you a photo of him and you tell me your thoughts." And so she sends me the picture, and I am completely taken back because he looks just like me and my brother, who have very strong genes, and we look a lot alike. And so from there, we just kind of walk through the child welfare system process in the sense of trying to find out if my brother was the actual father, biological father, DNA test, all of that. Really didn't need to because it's scary how much he looks like us, but still had to go through that legal process. And then it turned out that she was sharing that he had been in the care for so long that it was time for him to be adopted because his mother, and at that point in time, our brother still was struggling and could not take care of him. And so we went through that journey. And at first I was like, "Well, no, I don't want to be a single mom. That's not, something that I desire to be." And I prayed and I just asked God, if this is what you have for me, you have to just make sure that we just don't lack in any way or any capacity. And you have to make this clear to me, God, that this is the journey that you have for us. He was with a beautiful family, 2-parent household, a grandma and grandpa that lived right down the street and was taking care of him during the day. And So he had a beautiful setup. And so I was like, I don't want to take him from that. But God said, I have more for you. And because I have more for you, I have more for him. And so it was just one of those stories of just holding on to faith. I remember going to church one Sunday after struggling with the decision, and my then pastor and first lady were sharing, and they had never shared this story before. And they were sharing their story of, having struggles with conceiving and how they conceived their first son. And then they shared the story at the same time that God was calling them to adopt this little boy. And I'm boo-hoo crying, like, you've got to be kidding me. What is happening here? And so it was just a confirmation. And I went up to my pastor and first lady, and I had this conversation with them and told them what was happening in my life. And they said, you have to know this is God speaking to you, because we had never shared this story or journey. And this is our first Sunday ever speaking about it.
Yeah.
You've got to know that this is God speaking. And I was like, I know, and so from there, I met him when he was 2 years old, and he is now about to be 13. And so and I adopted him when he was 2.
Wow.
And it's just been he and I along this journey, and he is doing pretty good. He's a teenager now. And so we have questions, and he understands his story in the sense of, my brother is his dad and he has a different mom. He calls me TT, but identifies me as his mom. He only knows me as his mom. And so it's just a beautiful journey, in which God is just showing me how he continues to show up when we honor when we honor the yes that is called up on our lives. And so just continue to walk in faith in that area, and just continue to ask for prayer, just because as a single mom, regardless, it still can be challenging and it can be difficult. But I'm grateful that along the journey, there's been people that have walked alongside of us and encouraged us and been there for us and all that great things. So
Yeah. Wow. Absolutely incredible. I don't have any children that are teenagers yet, so I may be coming to you for some advice when we get to that point, because I can't imagine. But once again, just what an amazing story that you've been on so far. And it sure does sound like the story's not yet done. So let's maybe turn this towards Samaritan Village now, and just kind of what do y'all do and what's next? So, y'all have transitional homes, correct? And how many homes do y'all have?
So we have 3 safe homes. Our safe homes range from the most secure 24-hour care to our transitional home, in which the women are more working and developing their independent living skills in order to transition into their own home. And so our first stage home is, again, the more secure Ellen Arnold home, in which we have staff that are present 24/7. The women have a very structured and secured schedule, and they work through a lot of their trauma. And a lot of those women are, most times, they could have been a day away from their trafficking experience. But there are like some requirements in order to be accepted into the actual home. But that is the first home that they enter into once they have made the decision that they are ready and willing to go on this journey of healing, as they leave their life circumstances prior to with trafficking.
Wow. Okay. And then, so does each home progress in kind of going through this program, or is it really just the first home that's more unique? The other two are similar.
So it is a progression. And so the first home, we have the more secure. The second home, there is not as much structure, but they're still working on programming. There are still expectations around programming and the support that they will receive. And then the stage 3 home is where, again, there's a lot less of those programmatic aspects and expectations for the women. And then they are working on more of the independent living. But along the journey, we're teaching them independent living skills, our soft skills, and all those great things that they along the journey. But yes, it is a multi-tier stage in which they're kind of working through and expected to meet certain goals for each home before they're introduced to being able to move into that home or into that structure of that program. But yes, it is a step process.
Okay. And about how many women have y'all helped, or do you help in a given time? Yeah, what does that look like?
So we can house up to 15 women at a time, which is amazing. And so it gives us an ability to walk through that journey with them and have really an opportunity to get to know them. Our first home, you can stay up to the ladies stay up until 15 months. The second stage home, it's 12 months, and then the third stage is up to 12 to 15 months again. But again, we kind of journey through with them. It's a long-term care model. There is also an ability for them to request to stay longer. So we don't necessarily just say, hey, you're done with your 15 months. You have to move on. We're hopeful that by that 15 month, we've achieved all of the great things that we say that we're going to do in those stages of the home. But last year we were able with 2 homes to serve 19 women. Now we just dedicated the third home, which is the actual second stage model, which is interesting, this summer. And we are working on getting that up and running and actually filled with women by December of this year. So the other piece of that is that we wanted to look at an ability where there's a gap in services around ADA compliance. So serving those that have some specialty needs that definitely need to be supported as well. And so in our second stage home, we're hopeful to have some ADA compliance and work that through for all 3 homes in the near future.
Awesome. Okay. And so, your website mentions that you also assist those with chemical dependencies and addictions. Is this a common challenge that comes with sex trafficking situations?
Absolutely. When we talk about sex trafficking and when we talk about human trafficking in general, I think what's really important to understand is a lot of the women go into this lifestyle or experience this lifestyle not because they met this horrible, cringy guy that's just like the worst guy or the worst circumstance. Most times, this could be someone that they loved, they trusted, that was a boyfriend to them, and they began to develop this relationship with them. And oftentimes, how do they get them to be, I guess, induced or to want to do certain things as they use drugs as a mechanism to do that? And so traffickers oftentimes are making our women and survivors use drugs as a means to induce them to do some of the things that they're doing in their lifestyle. And it's not because, again, the women are not most times choosing to do drugs. It is made by them, by their trafficker, to do the drugs.
Wow. And so I imagine then that a part of this journey has to be healing from this as well, right? And I imagine there's resources that you offer for that and things of that nature. And I'm kind of curious what different roles are there in this organization? Because I've met some people who have maybe a safe house, right, or run a safe house. I don't know if I've ever talked to people that have multiple in this plan, in this program. So what sort of roles are there that help women through this program?
I think the beautiful thing is that we really believe in partnership and collaboration. Human trafficking, sex trafficking, we cannot work on, anti-trafficking work without having partnerships. And so that is the most important thing around how we do what we do is around partnerships. So a lot of the therapeutic services that we provide is through partnerships. And so we have different partners that come alongside of us to support us, but we have a clinical director that's on staff. So as women are going through and their healing journey and really working on some of these very difficult things, we're also equipping our staff through the clinical direction on how to support the women. We also have our residential director. Our residential director is looking at the programmatic pieces, like how do we continue to have a holistic model, a safe model in each one of our homes and really truly support the survivors' needs in the homes in order to ensure that our programmatic pieces are very clear, but also safe and helps to rebuild the women in a sense of having a sense of community. And so that's our residential director. Then we have a case manager. So as the women are journeying, as I said, into the stage 2 and stage 3 home, where they're having a lot more of those independent living skills, they have different things that the case manager can support them on. In addition to, they have all these different medical appointments, dental appointments, health appointments that they have to get to. That doesn't stop in the midst of our programming. These women still have a lot of trauma to their bodies. And so, how do we continue to help them heal mentally, physically, and spiritually? And so, they're going to their medical appointments that our case manager helps to facilitate. They're going to church. And so, we have our residential support staff who are hourly staff who come alongside and actually help support with that 24-hour care for our stage one home.
Gotcha. Okay. So with the caseworkers, do they have multiple women per caseworker? Like, do they help multiple women at the same time, or is it kind of one-on-one, or what does that look like?
So yeah, our caseload for our case manager, we have one case manager currently, but we're working on getting a second case manager. And so that second case manager would really facilitate the case management for stage 2 and stage 3. And then case management would be provided solely for stage 1, as they have a lot more appointments usually, and a lot more things going on that's necessary to help facilitate the needs around that. And so it will be like a shared caseload in that sense, but our residential director kind of plays that second case manager role, as well as ensuring that the programmatic pieces are taken care of. So together we all work together to kind of help. And then in addition to the big piece that helps, that is our volunteers. We have volunteers that come alongside of us to help with transportation. They help support like some of the different needs that we may have in the household, mentorship. When we're doing like spiritual development, they're helping do some of those pieces as well. A lot of our survivors come and they have absolutely nothing but the clothes that are on their back. And so we have to take them shopping. You know, who's going to take them shopping? We have volunteers to do that and have those fun experiences. But the addiction recovery that you identified, like we have those that have already, graduated that come back and help support some of that as well, around addiction and just recovery and being a mentor and an advocate for them. And so, yeah, we have a team that includes volunteers and our full-time staff, and then our part-time staff as well.
Well, back to it takes a village. It takes
It
multiple
takes
people.
a village.
Yep. Okay. What is, I'm sure there's not an exact number, but what is the success rate of a program like this, right? Women who come into this program clearly with trauma and through a tough situation, do a lot of women make it out of this? Do a lot of women get back into this? What's the success rate of something like this?
I think it's really important when we talk about success rate is to understand that everyone has their individual success and what it looks like. We are programmatically have worked on a plan to look at what those numbers truly look like as far as the success of our program, particularly with each stage of the homes that we have. But when we talk about just survivor success, I think it's so important that we understand that success may look different for one survivor than it does for another. And so someone saying, I made it through stage 1 could be a huge success. And they are not returning back to their trafficker. They're returning back to being reunified with their family and with their children. That's a success. Whereas someone else who we have graduates that have went from stage 1 all the way to stage 3, that is what they call their success. And so they've graduated through the program completely. And so I think that's the most important piece to hold on to, is understanding that we can give a number, but the success truly is in what the survivor story and success looks like, because it's very different. However, what we truly know is that as long as we're continuing to provide a safe place, a place where the women can heal from trauma and recover from addiction and truly be catalysts of change within their community, which is what our program does, then we know that they're going to be set up for success, whether they stay for 12 months or whether they stay for 3 years with us, that they will be successful and will not return to their trafficker. We can't say that every story has ended that way. That would be a false reality, as we're dealing with humans, as we're dealing with people that are still struggling in the midst of their journey. But what we do know is that we provide that place that they can come back to.
Yep.
when
Absolutely.
they're really ready to continue on the journey and to continue to be healed. So,
Absolutely. Well, and y'all are intervening in a place that's so needed where if this wasn't happening, there's no success, right? No matter how you measure it. But even in a program like this, yeah, lots of stories of success, and it looks different for each person. Um, I'm kind of curious for you personally. It can be Samaritan Village. It can be in another instance of volunteering or helping. What's just a personal victory that you've seen when it comes to anti-trafficking work or trauma work or abuse work? What's just a personal victory you've seen in this industry or in this situation?
oh yeah, well, I would definitely have to highlight the collaboration around supporting survivors and really looking at ways to actually help along the journey and providing various avenues. I think that what we've seen over the years is how human trafficking has went from, oh, it's the victim's fault, they've put themselves in the situation, or, oh, this is something that doesn't happen in the United States, we don't have to worry about this, to the evolution of understanding what truly is happening to the most vulnerable populations here in the United States, and even here in Central Florida, where we're number 3 around the number of calls that come in around human trafficking.
Wow.
And what we've seen happen is that we've seen collaboration to the point that we now have legislation that has taken place here in Central Florida to identify what are the things that are necessary for adult women, adult survivor safe homes, in order for us to truly be efficient in providing the care that's necessary. And so, because of the collaboration, you see legislation and legislators getting involved in the calls and trying to figure out the safest and best way to really truly support survivors along their journey, and having survivors come in and tell their story in a way that helps to change some of the policies and the legislation, but also in a way that helps to educate us as leaders and as those that are working alongside of them to be really equipped for the work. And so the collaboration is amazing. You have lived experience, you have those that have been working along in the field for a very long time, and then you have those that are new who want to figure out, how can I help? And so the awareness and the collaboration has been huge, and that's what I want to continue to celebrate, is that as we continue to know more and more about what's happening, that we're bringing that collaboration and that awareness, and that the survivors' voices are heard throughout all of it.
Mm, absolutely. Wow. So, last question for you to kind of wrap this up. Um, we have people who listen to this and say, I love the work that's happening. I don't really know how to get involved. I don't know what to do next. Maybe they're nervous or scared. Maybe it's kind of overwhelming, right? Sometimes we look at this massive problem and say, where do we even begin? What advice would you give to people who want to take that first step or that next step when it comes to cultivating freedom for people?
Absolutely. So I have two pieces of advice that I usually always give. One, you can never be too educated or unaware about what's happening in your community. So take the time to be educated. Find out what's happening in your specific community and what are the resources that are available. Find out what that hotline number is. So then, in case you see something, you can say something. And then, my second piece of advice is find out the organizations in your community, if there are any, that are doing the work and that are doing the work well. Come alongside of them, partner with them, find out ways that they can come and speak to your job, to your family, to your neighborhood, to community events. So then that way that they can begin to also educate the community about what's taking place in your area and how to best support. Because some communities come out and they have different ways in which they want you to support. But more than anything, what we say at Samaritan Village is pray for us, pray for the survivors that are still out on the streets, pray for the survivors that we have in our facilities that we're able to support. And then more than anything, look at opportunities to come and collaborate, whether it's through volunteering work, whether it's through your time, your talent, or your gifts that you have, and treasures that you have. And so partnering financially is always so, so important, because we cannot do this work without those funds and those champions that come alongside of us financially to support the work that we do. Everything that we do, it's 100% donations at this point.
Mm,
And so that's the way that we're able to support the women that we get to support. And it's an honor that we get
Mm.
to support them and to walk along this journey with them.
Absolutely. Wow. Danielle, this has been an absolute pleasure having you on and learning more about you, learning more about Samaritan Village, and just the story that y'all have been on and the incredible work that you're doing. How can people donate? How can they promote? Give us some steps of what people can do to support your organization.
Awesome. So just please visit our website at samaritanvillage.net. If you go on there, you will see an option to give. You will see an option to see all the amazing things that we're doing as well. You can also visit us on Facebook. We share a lot of things that we're doing either inside of our homes with the ladies, the things that we're supporting our champions that are coming alongside of us and how we're sharing the word. So you can visit our Facebook and our Instagram at Samaritan Village as well. And so we just are eager to have those come alongside of us who are true champions for this work and to continue to do the anti-trafficking work that is so imperative in our community, even here in the United States, that we know that it takes place even in our backyards.
Absolutely. Well, you heard it, folks. Go check out that website, check out Facebook, like, follow, and then donate, right? If you feel so compelled, donate. And we're actually going to jump in and get that started. So we have a Safe House Fund that is always building because we donate $1 of every coffee bag sold to Safe Houses. And so we have this fund that's always building because of our customers who are purchasing our coffee. And so, Danielle, I'm really excited to share that we're going to be donating $1,000 to Samaritan Village. We're going to be sending you a check in the mail. And that is all thanks to our customers, our incredible customers who continue to support what we're doing. And so we also just encourage them to go check out Samaritan Village, check out their website, and continue to get involved. So, Danielle, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you so very much, Philip, for having us. It's truly, truly a pleasure. And we thank you for spreading the word and for being a champion and for being an advocate for change across the United States. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again, Danielle. And to all of our listeners, reminder that we have this new Coffee and Club coming out. As I mentioned, $1 of every coffee bag going to Safe Houses. This club is a perpetual way to be involved with that. So if you're looking for your coffee to make a difference, and I think it tastes pretty good too, but I may be biased, definitely go check that out. Thank you all so much for listening. I'm your host, Philip Klayman, and we appreciate you helping us cultivate freedom.